when we take a claims call or we take a service call regarding a policy, something bad may have happened to that customer, right? You have to get in their shoes and you have to bring them down to a level where you can help them and help them understand that we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that their crisis that they're going through is moved to the level where they need to be happy and satisfied.
You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guests about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Very low abandon rate. Super fast hold time. Now, try and tell me about an industry that can claim facts like that. Well, many claim it, but can they back it up? All right. Now, how about this? This company provides exceptional service. Now, I'll tell you the industry later. By delivering truly comprehensive coverage through independent agents without surprise or concern. We do this because we exist to make this industry remarkably simple. What if I told you this was the insurance industry? Have you tried to call your insurance company? Would you call your interactions remarkably simple? And have you been able to interact without surprise or concern? Well, that's the mission and delivery of today's guest, as we have a chance to talk with Tim Kyse, Vice President of Customer Experience at Openly. Prior to his current role of delivering on a customer experience mission to bring that simplicity to insurance, Tim has a wealth of experience in the CX space, more specifically focusing on the customer success and customer service elements of customer experience, even to the point of building up a contact center overseas. Moving to Openly in March of 2022, Tim knows there's a healthy need for technology to deliver great customer experience, a need that can't ignore the human element either, both the human that's the customer, in this case, independent insurance agents, and the human that is the employee, the internal agent. There's a lot to deliver when you're responsible for customer experience, and I am excited to hear more about how Tim does this. Tim, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I get so excited at the beginning of these. I love getting a chance to learn, especially from someone who is truly running customer experience for a company. You did say something very interesting to me when we first met, and it was along with describing that low abandon rate and the super fast hold time. You said, we do very little training of our agents on the insurance side. For an industry that is so complex, how on earth can you do that and still achieve great customer experience results?
Well, like you said, I've been Openly since March of last year, and the mission of the company has always been to provide an easy experience within our insurance portal and provide the excellent customer service. So I inherited that culture from the way it was built from day one. So what we do is we pay a premium for our team, and we pay a premium for our talent because in the insurance space, especially with what we do, there's a license requirement for our frontline team. So most of the team has a producer producing license insurance license.
Oh.
And what that enables them to do is answer more complex questions and be in compliance because they have that license and training to do so. Examples are if an agent or a policyholder calls up and asks questions about, what if scenarios, we are allowed and to answer those questions as best we can because we do have that insurance license background. So we do spend a lot of time in the hiring process. Our people and culture team really dive into the requirements of the job, which is to have the insurance background. So our team does come from extensive years of insurance experience. So when they start, everyone goes through an onboarding experience, through Insurance 101. But yeah, they have that knowledge already built into their ecosystem. So we're not starting from step zero.
And so that makes a ton of sense, right? If that you're already hiring for skills that have that in place, then you don't have to train them. Now, there were a couple things that I hope that we have the chance to circle back to, because I'm very curious about the, choosing to pay more, right? Well, that's not something you hear a lot in the contact center ecosystem in general, right? Just forget industry, just in general, you don't hear, that's usually an area that's getting squeezed. And this idea of, well, that's not where we want to spend our money, is in that area is so right. So I may want to circle back to that, but something that you mentioned about how they already have those insurance skills is a bit counterintuitive to what a lot of folks might say when they're approaching a customer facing role, that they'll say that industry skills are those teachable skills, but it's the human skills like empathy, kindness, interest in others, and curiosity that are innate, that aren't necessarily something. So you look to hire for those as opposed to the industry skills. So how are you going about ensuring that you're getting both that industry skill and those human skills in an agent hire?
Yeah, sure. So I'll back up to the history of Openly. So at some point in the early stages or mid stages of the beginning stage of Openly, we had extensive growth, and we had to hire quickly. And we didn't have the training infrastructure in place. We didn't have, and this is all before I got here, we didn't have any of that stuff in place. So we had to bring in people that could step right into the phones and chats within a week or two. So that's kind of like the background for why we have the hiring approach that we've kind of just continued since I've gotten here. So if you look at Openly's core values, and a lot of companies share these core values, but in my opinion, we truly act on them, right? We have curiosity. We have teamwork, we have urgency, we build fast, and we build fast for our customers, and we build fast for our employees. But most importantly, empathy is our key core value. And you can't be successful at Openly if you do not have that core value. We do things differently in the insurance space. And I know other insurance companies have the same process of wanting to make sure their customers are happy and satisfied. But we really do focus on that. When we take a claims call or we take a service call regarding a policy, something bad may have happened to that customer, right? You have to get in their shoes, and you have to bring them down to a level where you can help them and help them understand that we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that their crisis that they're going through is moved to the level where they need to be happy and satisfied. And that's repairing something or replacing something that they lost, right? That's important to our company culture. So it's been ingrained from our senior leadership all the way down to the frontline team.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
So I'm listening to this both as, a podcast host, and I've got questions that I want to ask you, but I'm also listening to this as a consumer of the insurance industry. And I've experienced both. I've experienced that moment where there is some moment of crisis, right? Something, there was a major weather event that damaged something at the house, or being a part of an auto accident, or dealing with a healthcare insurance element associated with that. And the various degrees of empathy that I've received in those situations has had a massive impact on how I really went through that journey as a customer. So to hear you say that that's something that y'all are not working on, but that's strive from the very beginning of the culture, has warms my heart, right? As a consumer, and I'm glad to hear more and more of that. I just wish that there was more and more of that out there. Now, there's something though about that. So sometimes empathy takes time. Sometimes it's the longer calls. It's the really taking the time to understand a customer. We, at the very beginning of this call, talked about one way to achieve a really short hold time is companies will apply this undue pressure on their agents. And this seems very counter to going about empathy, but pressure on agents to complete a call as quickly as possible, even if it is at the expense of customer experience, because by gosh, we've got to get our average hold times down and we've got to get our average handle times down. Well, that doesn't sound like what you're describing there, but it's a challenge. So how are you delivering on these great operational metrics and achieving the delivery of great customer experience?
So I'll go back to the company culture. I would say we've not overly invested in customer experience, but we make sure we have more people in seats answering phone calls and chats than maybe we need, right? Maybe there's a 1 or 2 headcount over what the science is telling us what we need to deliver on a good service experience. Mm-hmm. So we're a little bit over a little bit, so we're able to have those low abandonment rates, but we also have built our operations in place within Zendesk and in our IVR that, the way we look at operations is that it's our job to make sure, and I'll back up for a second here. The key thing we hear in NPS scores and customer satisfaction surveys, and just through conversations with our agents and customers, is that they love the fact that when they click on the chat icon, somebody's there to answer that chat within 20 seconds. They get on a phone call, they're on their cell phone in the car, bam, 24 seconds. Somebody's there picking up the phone call. So we take that and say, okay, this is what we need to deliver on. So let's build our operation all around this. And because we have those licensed insurance folks on our team, we know that once that phone call gets answered, the agent, the insurance agent or the policyholder's question is going to be answered, right? Our data tells us that. Our CSAT scores are in the high 90s. NPS scores are really high too. So we built the operation around making sure that the agent phone call is being answered. And then we hand it off to the frontline team to actually service and deliver that. When it comes to undue pressure, we actually don't have handle time. I do not believe in handle time as a metric in the contact center. I think it's an archaic way of measuring.
Good.
It's not a customer experience metric as far as I'm concerned. So we don't put the pressure on. We use handle time to understand where our longer calls are. Most likely has to do with our process that's not great, or a product enhancement that needs to be put in place. It's not on the frontline team when their handle time is at a certain level, above normal. So I don't believe in undue pressure on our team. That's not the culture we have here.
I like what I'm hearing there. I talk a lot about customer insights when it comes to agents, and I definitely want to ask you about that. What I like that not only are you talking about customer insights from what your metrics, your research, your data, you're also using it for your operational improvements aspect of it. And it is interesting to hear you say that, a longer call time, and you went into, I think you just said it so naturally. There's a lot of companies that aren't immediately assuming that it's something with the process, the systems, the tools. They're assuming that the agent did something wrong. It's a culture of attack the agent, and the agent did something wrong. Whereas if it's taking that long, we as a company have failed our agent, and then in turn have failed our customer. In your case, your customer agent as well. So let's talk about those insights for a second. So in this case, I'm talking about the Openly agent. When I talk about frontline, they are the ones that are there at the co-creation of customer experience. They're the ones who know customer insights better than anyone. They know what the customer is experiencing, living, feeling, breathing, hating, loving. So with that unique perspective, there's a ton of information that sits locked in the contact center inside the contact center agent. How do you capture that agent insight, that customer, that contact center insight? And then more importantly, how do you act on it?
Yeah, sure. So just backing up to the previous question. So have you watched Ted Lasso before?
Oh, most certainly. Yes, I have watched Ted Lasso. Loved it. Like a heck of a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
Great show.
I can't tell you how many times I've been into a meeting before where somebody shared the GIF or a picture of "Be curious, not judgmental," right? So when it comes to the handle time question before, we're curious. Why? So we listen to the phone call, and 99% of the time, it's not our frontline team doing anything wrong. It's something that our operation team, me, is responsible and accountable to fix on the back end. So just giving you some insight to more about the culture of Openly is that's our approach. We don't finger point, and then we don't have that toxic culture that would put the undue pressure on people to answer.
Can I interrupt? Because I know you're about to answer the other question. I love that you went there, but I really want to answer. Okay, how? Because that's the ideal culture. That's what a lot of people strive to create. That's what a lot of folks strive to work in. They try to interview to be a part of a company that's like that. How would you say that Openly has successfully implemented a culture that is curious, not judgmental? That's not easy.
No, it's not easy at all. Because we are on the, we're year 5 or 6 now. So we're just constantly building and evolving, but we can't do that if we have people quiet, right? The worst thing you can have in a service culture or culture in general is when people don't talk, right? It's the quiet quitting, I guess. So we have to create avenues for folks to get their opinions and insights to the rest of the company. So we're really working on our inclusive environment where everyone has an opinion about something, and we have the framework or building frameworks to make sure that they are heard. It's not easy though, especially in a remote world, right? And for me, I am motivated by turnover, right? I don't like turnover. We don't experience too much of it openly, and I hate turnover costs. So we do everything we possibly can to play defense and be proactive against that from happening. So, in my opinion, and the way I survive and thrive here at Openly in my career is fulfillment, right? So we try to pass that on to the frontline team too.
Okay.
Make sure the jobs are filled and they feel like they have an impact on something.
You are taking me down conversational threads that I was not expecting. I want to explore the remote part of this a little more as well. This was a different conversation 2 years ago. Everybody was like, well, okay, we're all remote and that's how we live and that's going to be life. Well, we've seen the return to office, and I am not here to engage in that debate. That's not the point of what I'm saying. But for a company that has chosen to stay remote, engagement absolutely is one of the biggest challenges. I saw it at one of my former clients and how they solve for that. And really, it takes effort. Tactically, Tim, how are y'all continuing that level of engagement when you aren't there to look somebody in the physical eyes and put a hand on a shoulder or shake a hand?
Yeah. So Rick, you and I were introduced by a fellow friend of ours, Marjorie Hook, who's our VP of People and Culture at Openly.
Yes.
She's been here for a year now, and she's worked extensively hard on the employment engagement part of Openly. And one of the things that she's really built good structure around is engagement surveys that we did for the first time last year, and we're doing, we're going to be doing throughout the year too as well. And folks gave us really good insight onto how we can better engage remotely, because as we're getting bigger and bigger, and we're all across the country, it's becoming harder and harder. So everyone's got a different working style, right, and a communication style. So we're very heavily involved in Slack. We rarely use email, but some folks like email as for their general updates. So we were really working on constant communication through all channels. We really work on having good calculated team huddles on a weekly basis, and we're giving good updates. Insurance changes all the time. Like when we have a storm that comes in, right, we have to put some policies in moratorium, right? We have to update the frontline team to make sure that they're well informed. So we over communicate on everything, whether it's updating stuff in the knowledge base, Slack, email, verbal meeting. And just creating that from an information standpoint. Our product team, which is very much connected with the frontline service team, is bringing our frontline team in for testing on new features. They're doing interviews with that team. And so there's a connection bridge right there. So our team is saying, hey, if you build this, we'll stop this from happening. And our product team is building out, and they're seeing the results of that. So you see the engagement and fulfillment coming through the employee experience.
Tim, I absolutely love that. As someone who listeners are probably bored of hearing me say this, that I love the front line being the epicenter, the fact that y'all are so focused on the engagement, the fact that y'all are talking about bringing them together with the product team to make things actually happen. That's an example of a company that's not ignoring the gold that sits there in the contact center. And I'm so thankful to hear that. I guess, one thing, if you're going to spend the money, the premium on the contact center, well, let's extract that gold. So good for you for doing that as well, along with delivering a great customer experience. Tim, with a company that is scattered around the wide regions and remote, I imagine there might be some times that you get out there and do a little bit of travel. And even if it stays exclusively remote, I'm sure that you enjoy the ability to get out there on the road. And one of the things that the road has taught me is that it is nice to take a break. And that is what we're going to do right now as we head into the first class lounge. Have a little fun here, hopefully move quickly, and we'll see where things go. What is a favorite destination of yours from your past?
I love Aruba. Aruba is a place where the weather is very consistent, right? You might get a 2-minute rainstorm every day, but you're almost guaranteed good weather when you go down there. And funny enough, the customer experience and customer service in Aruba is just top notch. From the moment you land no matter what hotel you choose, restaurants you go to, customer service is their bread and butter. So as somebody in the industry, I take notice of that stuff. So Yeah.
Well, Aruba's one of the ones I haven't been to. I need to go to more of the Caribbean. I live in Texas. I'm closer to the
Mhm.
Caribbean than a lot of folks in the
Yeah.
country, and I need to get over there a little bit more often. I have not been to Aruba and had not heard that theme of their approach to customer service. So I'm excited about that. And you're right. Probably the worst person for any hospitality industry to have as a guest are people like us that are in the customer experience industry, because we know what good looks like and our expectations are set that way.
Yeah.
What is, if Aruba's on my future list, what is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
I've been to a couple of countries in Europe, but I really like to backpack through Europe. My wife is an awesome researcher, so I think she would set us up nicely. But taking the Euro train and going to as many countries to see as possible, I think would be cool. I'd love to see that part of the world. Again, I haven't explored too much of it, but I think that's a missing part of my travel experience.
And the idea of backpacking it is so glorious. Now, I did the cliched post-college backpacking trip. So I graduated in 1995, put on the backpack and did the Eurorail and all that aspect. And pre-phone, so you got your little Let's Go book, flipping through that. Those of you that know what the Let's Go book is. Tim, you're doing it the right way, though. And while I appreciate that the miserly approach that I had to do as a just recently graduated college student taught me a lot. Going as a backpacker with a little bit of euros in my pocket might be a little more enjoyable experience. So I think you're doing it the right way of doing the career a little bit, building up some funds, and then going and doing the backpacking. You'll love it. It's going to be a fantastic trip.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about Europe and really the globe in general is the food. And so what is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
I'm a steak person. I love steak. All my work trips, whether I meet with my team or we have a leadership meeting offsite somewhere, we'll always do a steakhouse, and that's definitely my number one favorite food.
Well, Tim, you're talking to somebody in North Texas, the Dallas area, which is very well known for its steakhouses. So if you ever make your way down here, let's go make sure that we get ourselves a nice steak and meet in person sometime. That is an open invitation. Now let's go the other direction. Growing up, what is something that you were forced to eat, but you hated as a kid?
Same answer. Steak.
Really?
I just couldn't. I would be in the kitchen table by myself. I couldn't chew it. And it was just like, it was one of those forever things. And I did not enjoy the steak process. And my mom would make me sit at the table and eat it until I was done. And then years later, it just clicked. Oh, wow, I'm missing the component of the steak. Maybe it was too dry. I don't know. Right. But I figured it out that I was the problem, and I readjusted my likes of food. So
I know that there's two ways to consume this podcast. I have the folks that are the listeners, and I have those that are the viewers. Listeners, my jaw had fallen out of my face when I heard that steak was the answer. Tim, you win. That is the first answer for steak that I've ever heard for that question. This is 140 some odd episodes or something like that at this point. What is one travel item, not including your phone, not including your passport, that you will not leave home without?
So you may not be able to tell by the podcast, but I'm pretty high energy, and you could probably tell actually. But I like to exercise before I really start my day out. So whether it's a business trip, even on vacation, right? If my parents live down the Jersey Shore, and I visit them often in summertime, I'll start the day out biking 20 miles down the beach. So definitely some kind of exercise gear is critical, especially on business trips, because I cannot hop into a meeting without having the thought process and energy kind of like start kicking off the day for me.
I could not agree with you more. In fact, and I'm losing track of which guest it was. It was in the recent past. A guest and I were talking about how for him, it was his running shoes or walking shoes or whatever. And talking about, I had referenced a situation where I ended up in Hong Kong and had left mine. And so one of the first things is finding a sporting goods store in Hong Kong to go buy tennis shoes. I'm with you that I cannot do a business trip, especially if they're longer ones, without some kind of exercise or getting out there. I thought you were about to tell me that you were going to travel with your bike. So I was going to be really impressed if that was your one item. That was going to be impressive. So Tim, you mentioned joining Openly in the recent past. And I'm curious because you had a career in many other areas, so you had choices. What drew you to Openly? What are some of the kind of really interesting, juicy customer experience stories that you know there?
Yeah. So I was at Vimeo for about a year, and it was a great job. I was running support technology and systems. It was an awesome job, working with the best in class service technology. But then I was introduced to Openly, which reminded me a lot of my quick pay real page days in the beginning, where it was kind of a startup culture, right? And you had the opportunity to come in and build something that was really successful for where it was in this point, and really enhance it and take it to the next level. And I tell this to my team all the time. The best thing about experience is that you got to learn from all the mistakes you made, right?
Yeah.
You make a ton of mistakes
Amen.
when you start out doing something. And, and just taking all those lessons learned and applying them here and then constantly evolving what we're doing here was an opportunity I just couldn't pass up. When I interviewed, the executive team was so impressive as far as their background and experience and their passion for doing this. I thought and my gut told me that it was contagious around the company, and I was totally right by that assumption. It was one of those interviews. I mean, I went through multiple rounds of interviews here, but it was one of those interview process where you're like, I want this job, and it all worked out, and I got it, and I couldn't be happier working here. The opportunity to learn and evolve and change and adapt is really, really a key part here.
Yeah, well, it's always great when you find that right match, especially those of us that are in that CX space, because it does, not only does it just satisfy kind of the corporate itch, but it satisfies that human itch that it just, that you found that good heart component to what you're looking for. You referenced technology, talking about Vimeo, and we all know that right now, AI is almost a required conversation. I feel like that the Podcasters Union, there's not actually one, but the Podcasters Union has demanded that I bring up AI in every single episode. But I do because it's interesting, it's topical, it's what's on the minds of folks right now, including me. I'm trying to learn. I feel somewhat behind as I'm learning, right? Mm-hmm. I'm curious, though, because AI has this wide definition, right? We've been doing AI stuff for decades. But how are you including the current versions of AI and what it means to you at Openly and the delivery and then the improvement of customer experience?
Yeah. So I'll piggyback the last question you asked about Openly, right? So the opportunity for me to help come in and build the foundational pieces to help us scale going forward. And some of that has to do with bringing in a workforce management tool, building out a self-service experience, building out a help center that helps not only our internal team, but our customers self-serve and at the end of the day, provide a better experience and results in ticket deflection. Insurance, so you can't do any of that stuff until your foundations are in place. So the softwares that we use, like Zendesk, is a big part of our ecosystem. It's our main hub for support. So we are very reliant on what they build out and their capabilities in their system. We use a workforce management tool that has some AI functionality to it. But insurance in general is somewhat regulated. I mean, not somewhat, it's very regulated. And
in my head, I was saying, boy, that's really understating it, Tim.
Yeah. So it's very regulated. So the controls that I have to adhere to are way more intense than it was back when I was doing AI in the past. So that's something to keep an eye on. But from Openly's perspective, what we're doing on a service level and just a general service culture, we're doing the right things right now. And we are very wary of the risk of breaking that experience. But that does not mean that we're not interested in implementing AI. So from an AI perspective, and again, using the tools that we use, a lot of it's based upon what their capabilities are. We're looking at AI first from an internal perspective, right? So a ticket comes into Zendesk, it's scanning the ticket, the AI is scanning the ticket, and it's going to suggest articles or the next answer for that frontline team to answer with, because it's surfed through this same type of inquiry, and we have the same result populate on that old ticket with a CSAT of 99%, 100%. We're confident that article or that workflow will be the right part of this ticket. So we're starting slow internally as really like our basis point for this stuff.
If you were thinking about where you'd prioritize it, because I like what you were saying there of there's a couple of ways that you might go about it. There's the improving it for your customer, the independent agent. There's improving it being experienced for your internal agent. And you mentioned that the tools that are made available to help understand an inbound ticket and what that request is and help educate the agent on that. There's tools that are available to deflect so that there's a self-service component. If you had to, and I know these binary choices are somewhat arbitrary and somewhat false, but if you had to choose, where would you put your prioritization of technology improvements to help improve the overall experience? Are you looking towards the agent? Are you looking to the customer? How are you approaching that prioritization decision?
So again, going back to the foundation, I really think that building out the internal process, internal structure is critical here. On my roadmap, I'd love to integrate all of our systems to talk to each other, right? And that's a company initiative that we have backing for all players, right? We use Salesforce as our CRM. We use Zendesk for our ticketing system. We have our Openly portal that houses all of our policies. How do we connect the three of them, right, to all talk to each other and then bring that data together and tell the true story of how a customer's doing or how we're doing, but really bring the context of the policy right to the frontline team. Instead of them having to go to, get the ticket in or get a phone call in and then have to go to another system to find stuff, right? Why can't we pull that? The answer is we can, but it just requires some investment of time and energy. But it's definitely on the company roadmap to do that.
And, as I'm asking the question in the back of my mind, I know that it's almost a trick question because the example that you provided there, well, you know what, if you improve the agent's experience, you're going to improve the customer's experience because think of something so frustrating as a customer, Tim, right? We're calling in and we have a question and you just hear the clickety-clack, I don't know if it's coming to the microphone, but, hit my keyboard here and how that, the agent is trying to find the information or accessing it. I was part of one of the companies that I worked for before I became an independent consultant. Exactly that. It was 16 screens that an agent had to go through to answer one question for a customer. And that included validation screens, topical screens, updating screens. Consolidating that into one improved the agent's experience. It improved the customer's experience, and it actually improved the operational metrics that you and I were talking about earlier as well. So I love that you're starting there from the agent to then be able to improve the overall customer experience. Tim, we're out of time. I just looked down and I'm kind of shocked by it. This was a fun conversation. I'm glad that you've taken me on that journey through Openly. A lot of folks would not look to the insurance industry, I think I can get that word out, as a source of customer experience mentoring and motivation and ideal. And yet what you're describing is exactly that was the choice made at the beginning of the creation of the company to be able to move that forward. And some of the stories you've told certainly have inspired me in that regard. I will say that you have certainly surprised me with your answer around steak being the item that is one that you did not like as a kid. That caught me off guard. Tim, if folks wanted to learn more about your stories, learn more about your journey through the appreciation of steak, but really more your customer experience stories, or to learn more about Openly, where would they turn to learn more?
Obviously, my LinkedIn profile is pretty active. I'm active in the Zendesk Slack community. I'm active in the support-driven Slack communities, and that's a great way for people to coexist and help each other out. I think to my opinion, the CX industry is all full of passionate people, and we're all trying to help each other out. So, we often go to those Slack communities before we go to our technology vendors for support because everyone has an answer. They've experienced that same problem, and that's the part about giving back that I think I really appreciate about CX is that leadership who once was doing this in the front lines is now in leadership positions. We can now give back and teach and help and develop people that we don't even know.
I love it. And so I'm going to get all that into the show notes as well. I don't want to leave, though, without commenting and saying I love that what you've observed about it, not observed, experienced in the CX community. I have felt it as well. I felt it through the warmth of guests being willing to give up their time to participate in CX Passport and share their insight and their stories. I felt it as a customer experience practitioner as I learn from others. It really is. I have found this to be one of the least competitive spaces and it's been one of the most collaborative spaces in the customer experience world. And I have very much appreciated that. Tim, I've appreciated that. I've appreciated what you've shared with me today. I've appreciated you being on CX Passport. Tim, thank you for being on CX Passport.
Exactly. This is great. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.